Pose with the fans. Pose with the pose with the pose with the fans. Pose with the pose with the pose with the fans. Fans. Pose with the fans.
Assalamualaikum and a very good day to everyone. We will group 9 from section 3 will be present our term paper entitled Misuse or Abuse of Right and Global Economic Crisis. So let me begin with the introduction. So over time, the idea of right has shifted to a more individualistic view rather than focusing on justice between people. So as a result, right violation have become normalized in society with a few corrective action taken. So moving on to the background, the root cause of this global economic crisis is not only the impact on human rights, but that they originate from failure to uphold those rights. For example, under capitalism, many governments have shifted their responsibility to the market, especially concerning economic and social rights. And while capitalism claims that self-interest drives prosperity, the 2008 global financial crisis exposed how unchecked self-interest encouraged greed, overconsumption, and right violation. So despite the GDP growth, this led to widening inequality and wide gaps. From Islamic perspective, according to the keynote address titled Islamic Finance and the Fiqh of Crisis Management by Mr. Abdul Rashid Ghaffur, the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Malaysia, at the 16th International Sharia Scholars Forum, ISSF. So he noted that Islamic finance is primed to offer value-based solution, given the inherent value of Maqasid Sharia that strive the attainment of benefit and prevention of harm. So in terms of the significance, this paper deepens our understanding of how misuse of right fuels global instability and integrates Islamic economic principle into real-world analysis. And it also supports the SDG Goal 10, reduce inequalities, by showing how inequality threatens long-term rights and economic stability. And finally, our paper answers 6 key research questions, including: first, what structural economic factors contribute to the misuse of right? Second, how do regulatory failures enable the misuse of right? Third, how does the abuse of right lead to broader economic repercussions? Fourth, modern example of to what extent the misuse of economic right by political leaders can contribute to global economic stability. Fifth, what global economic crises have arisen from the abuse of right in developing countries. Last, how do Islamic economic principles address and prevent the abuse of right that contribute to global economic stability?
And now let's continue. Our fundamental rights are essential, but how do global economic structure affect them? And we are going to explore economic factors that contribute to the misuse of right based on the article of Human Rights and Global Economic Crisis by Center for Economic and Social Rights, CESR 2009.
Let's begin with a powerful economic ideology, which is market fundamentalism. Market fundamentalism is the belief that unfettered pursuit of self-interest regulating market that will ensure economic prosperity for all the most efficient allocation of resources. And it is pushed through the policy package such as liberalization, privatization, also deregulation that was supported by international institutions like International Monetary Fund and World Bank. Consider the 2008 global financial crisis. It was not just a market downturn. The Center for Economic and Social Rights stated that the crisis has threatened human rights worldwide, impacting on access to health, housing, food, and education. It stemmed from excessive risk taking by financial institutions that was led to the predatory lending practice such as subprime mortgage. And this practice has led to the foreclosure. And compounding the problem was a significant issue of regulatory failure and undue influence. As the financial market shift towards self-regulation, many crucial rules were rolled back, and this allowed the powerful elite to take a massive gambles, which ultimately caused everything to crash.
So the widespread of market fundamentalism and the policies itself have influence on the global economic crisis, leading to the misuse or abuse of fundamental human rights.
Hi everyone, in this part I will explain how regulatory failures enable the misuse of rights, especially in the banking sector. Regulatory failure happens when regulators can properly monitor or control certain activities. This allows businesses, especially powerful ones like banks, to act in ways that may harm the public or the economy. The misuse of rights here means abusing authority or privilege for personal or corporate gain. According to Egan and Lambert in their article 2019, Bank Lobbying, Regulatory Capture and Beyond, one mechanism for regulatory failure is something called regulatory capture. This is when banks have too much influence over regulators, so instead of protecting the public, regulators end up serving the bank's interests. This happened mainly in two ways. First, career concerns. Some regulators act softly towards banks, hoping to get high-paying jobs in those same banks later on. Since private sector salaries are usually higher, this creates a conflict of interest. Second, there's information asymmetry. Banks have technical knowledge and private data that regulators don't. So regulators rely heavily on what the banks tell them, but the banks often share only the information that benefits them while hiding the risky parts. This is exactly what happened during the 2008 global financial crisis. Now, there are two types of rights misuse that stem from this. First is personal misuse, where bank executives make decisions to protect their bonuses, reputations, or jobs, even if it means exposing the bank to risky or unethical practices. Second is property misuse. This happens when banks use shareholder or public funds to take excessive risks. They chase short-term profits, but if things go wrong, they often face no serious consequences. In short, weak regulations open the door for powerful actors to misuse their rights, putting the entire financial system and the public at risk. That's all from me. Bye!
So in conjunction with our previous research questions, I will now delve into deeper exploration on how does abuse of rights eventually lead to global economic repercussions. So building on our arguments on the ideas presented by Juan Pablo Bohovslavsky, he examines the idea of misuse of rights in the context of tax abuse, which falls under two categories, which are tax evasion and tax avoidance. A typical approach used in the tax evasion is trade misinvoicing, where the businesses purposely fabricate their trading documents by understating the exports and overstating the imports, and it is clearly breaking most of the national tax obligations. However, a common practice used in the tax avoidance is significantly different from tax evasion because they use the method of profit shifting. So what is profit shifting? Profit shifting is when the multinational corporations transfer their profits into low tax rates countries, so their revenues they generated are slightly taxed. Integrating these actions done by businesses and corporations, it is worth to highlight that this form of abuse resulting in the governments lose large tax revenues. As a result from the loss of revenues, the governments now will have fewer funds to provide social incentives and public services to the citizens. And despite of that, the governments will also lose their potential earnings due to corporations transfer their profits outside of the countries, making them lose the possible investments at the local businesses. Enabling the multinational companies to avoid their fiscal duties will exacerbate the existing problem here, which is increasing the economic inequality between the rich and the poor, and that will eventually lead to global economic repercussions. Severe economic inequality will cause millions of people losing the access to essential goods like safe housing, quality food, and healthcare. Hence, the governments now will have to lend financial assistance, so they will have fewer funds to invest on their international tradings and business initiatives. In conclusion, the potential for globalization will be limited and slow the country's overall development.
What happens when world leaders misuse economic powers not by accident but through unpredictable and poorly justified decisions? This is what Dora Naroski explores in Bluff Without Purpose, a critique of Donald Trump's tariff policy and how it shook global economic stability. Trump's administration imposed sweeping tariffs on imports, claiming it was a strategic move. As proclaimed by Cristiano Carvalho, it was backed by game theory. But Naroski argues it was anything but strategic. He outlines 4 key flaws. First, real game theory requires rational actors and clear goals. Both are absent in Trump's case. Second, credibility is critical, but Trump's frequent reversals undermine trust. Third, there was no consistent objective at all. The tariff shifted from punishing China to targeting allies. And fourth, outcomes contradicted any claim of strategic success. Rather than classic models like chicken game, tit for tat, or prisoner's dilemma, Naroski compares this chaos to musical chairs theory: unpredictable, destabilizing, and without rules. Worse still, allies like Canada and European Union were treated as enemy. As a result, it crushed decades of cooperation. Tariffs now become tools of confusion and no longer a policy. The consequences? High cost of living for US citizens, retaliatory tariff, and damaged global trust. This all happens because of rights exercised without clarity or purpose. Naroski's message is clear. When political leaders misuse economic rights, the impact goes far beyond borders. In the end, it threatens the very foundations of global stability.
Now we proceed with the 5th research question. Is about what global economic crises that have arisen from abuse of rights in developing countries. So first, do you know Zimbabwe? Yeah, Zimbabwe started the Fast Track Land Reform Program FTLRP in the 1980s to correct unequal land ownership. So at their independence, only 3% of Zimbabwe's population, mostly white farmers, control more than half of the prime agricultural land. So this program intended to redistribute land to black Zimbabweans but lacked proper legal procedures and planning. So the land was seized without compensation or legal process. And even several constitutional amendments allow compulsory acquisition, while the Rural Land Occupiers Act protected unlawful occupants and blocked landowners from court. And then, land registration law were bypassed, undermining legal protection and enabled the government to redistribute land without respecting ownership rights. and this program led to the international sanction that cut off foreign aid and loans. Unemployment rose to 70% and poverty increased sharply. And Zimbabwe experienced hyperinflation reaching to 1,600% by 2007, forcing it to abandon its own currency, industry collapsed, and millions immigrated to find better opportunities. Therefore, this Zimbabwe's land reform illustrate how abusing economic right will destabilize a country's economy and society, and this case highlight the global repercussions of that violation in developing countries.
How do we stop the abuse of economic rights that fuel inequality, crisis, and instability? The answer is Islamic economics. It offers a unique answer through ethics and not just economics. According to Ahmadi and colleagues, Islamic economics is more than profit margins and technical rules. It's a moral economy, one that rooted in justice, compassion, and accountability. Ultimately, it is guided by the Quran and Sunnah. Key mechanisms like zakat and prohibition of riba are just not religious duties. They are economic tools. Zakat ensures wealth redistribution and social protection. The ban on riba prevents exploitation through debt. These principles form ethical barriers against practices that lead to global crises, for instance, hoarding, speculation, and inequality. Islamic economics also aligns with the moral economy tradition discussed by E.P. Thompson, where economic behavior is shaped by community values and not just market forces. At political level, Islam emphasizes that government must ensure justice and inclusion. For example, government must enforce zakat, provide for the needy, and regulate finance. Ahmadi et al. Argue that by integrating morality into economic policy, Islamic economics responds to global challenges. From inequality to environmental degradation, Islamic economics offers a holistic and ethical alternative to extractive capitalism. But the vision remains powerful. We need a system where our rights are protected, justice is prioritized, and the economy serves humanity.
This is Choose Remake.